Hello, Tech Pros, episode 143.
22% of the workforce is not engaged. Beware of that. That's really a big number. 68% of your company is not happy. So go fix it.
Welcome to the podcast where I chat with professionals who are getting the job done using technology 7 days a week. Each week we start with Motivation Monday. Tuesday is about productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people and communication, Saturday, entrepreneurship, and Sunday, being unplugged. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Dennis Green-Lieber. Happy Wednesday, Dennis.
Happy Wednesday, Chad. Fantastic. Wednesdays are my favorite day.
Yeah, it's hump day. It's right in the middle of the week, ready to downhill slide to the weekend.
Exactly. This is like it's the peak of the week where you've planned all the stuff you should have done Monday. You're doing that Wednesday, and then you're planning how you should get that checked off before you go off on weekends, right? So
yeah, exactly. So we started with Motivation Monday. We got fired up to hit the week with a high level of intensity, and then Productivity Tuesday, we're trying to make the most out of our time, the most out of our week, and then here we are with Leadership Wednesday, and it's all about growing ourselves and growing our people as leaders, and it's going to be an awesome conversation with you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. This is, of course, my most favorite topic in the world. So I think it's important. It's important for millions of people out there who work with businesses. So I think why not improve that?
Absolutely. Well, let me introduce you to our audience today. Dennis Green-Lieber is a product business developer at Founders, a startup studio based in Copenhagen, Denmark, and the co-founder of Duo.io. Dennis is a veteran in the marketing technology space in the agency world and turned into a startup kid as head of R&D at Falcon.io, where he grew a team from 2 to 50 over 2.5 years with $23 million investment. So, Dennis, before we got kicked off, you were telling me a little bit about just the structure of the companies here. So you got Founders, and you got Falcon, and you've got Duo. How do all these things kind of relate to set our audience up with, okay, this is who Dennis works for, and this is what he's building?
Yeah, so the Falcon thing was my prior job. It was a social media management software that we were building. And I think you could classify them as these kind of hyper-growth companies where, my first role there was to really build up a team and scale the team, and a lot of the conversation about how to build big teams and how do we, grow and all that. It's also mentioned to you before, this is some of the really things that I've learned a lot from, that should not always be the methodology of how to build businesses. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot from leadership, how to manage teams, a lot of stuff. So there's a lot of problems that came out of my journey there, or not that it was a bad company, just a lot of learnings for me as a person going through that. Then I joined Founders. I joined Founders on the belief of we have an investor in Founders. We're a startup studio, meaning we come up with our own ideas that we invest in, and then we kind of take them to market. And we build these ideologies that it's a long-term play. We're not talking about, pump and dump schemes or quick exits. We want to have social impact. We want to create and change the way work is in the future. And that's not only on what we're talking about leadership, but it's also in how do people communicate, or how do people share information. There's a lot of different things we're working to solve as an entity with Founders. And one of our big investors is Lego, and Lego has that kind of, playful, fun mindset. We should invest into the community. We should innovate. And I think that's really a good fit for both what we're doing as a company with Duo, but also me as a person that's really been stepping back and thinking a lot about before I joined that.
Man, that sounds like such an amazing environment to work in. First of all, Lego being your sponsor, man, that's incredible. I'm sitting here in my home office, and I've just got stacks of Legos behind me. We don't have this as a video podcast, but I've got the Lego Millennium Falcon, and then I've got a ton of Lord of the Rings sets. And I've got some unopened boxes that I haven't yet put together because I haven't had time after moving this last year. But yeah, I'm a huge Lego fan.
We're based in Copenhagen, right? So we're Danish. So for us, it's like, this is what we played with since I was a kid. Like this is like, and I think like me being an engineer has a pretty engineering mindset at least. of like how I played with Lego as a kid. I always followed the manual, and then I looked at it, and then I break it apart, and then I completely build new things. And I think that's the beauty of that product by itself. And I think a lot of that have been applied into my professional life afterwards. So I'm stoked by having that as a part of my journey at the moment.
Yeah, I love that engineering mindset and that experimentation and that play mindset that they taught us as kids through their toy products is now what they're investing in, right? As as investing into founders and investing into Duo is really playing and teaching and experimenting and building new teams of people that are doing amazing things.
Exactly. So it's very close to the mindset, and I love that.
Awesome. Well, Dennis, today on Leadership Wednesday on Hello Tech Pros, it's all about leadership, which is not necessarily meaning a manager, right? Because in my mind, there's a huge difference between manager and leaders. You don't have to be a manager to be a leader. You can be a leader in your church or in your volunteer group or in business, just as an individual contributor. You can be that person that inspires and leads other people around you. So what I would like to do, one of the things that we always do on Leadership Wednesday is tell a story of your most horrible boss. And we don't want to name names. We don't want to say exactly who the person is or allude to exactly where they were at so people can figure it out. But what we do want to do is tell the story of, the time where you were just being led by someone who didn't inspire you and didn't motivate you and just turned out to be your most horrible boss ever. And then we can learn lessons from that and talk about what we should do as leaders to not show those attributes.
For sure. And I think also the question is, what should we not do as employees? Because I think that's also, it's a two-way street, right? So, so I worked in this small agency about a few years back. If you went to my LinkedIn profile, you might be able to kind of back document that. But I think I don't have had like a horrible boss, but I've really had bosses that really, really killed my motivation and my thinking process. And that turned me into kind of a robot of work. Like I came to work, I did, A, B, I never thought about C, I never made any decisions, and then I just left again. And I think that was more a bad experience for me. Like I wouldn't want any other employee to go through that, even though you see scenarios where people are being, aggressive or just not, nice and not genuine about what they're doing. But I think there's also a big problem of not understanding that other part of it, where how do you unlock my potential? And this particular guy, every project he gave me, it was almost dictated, like every part of it I should do. So I never thought that I had any ownership of the role. He took all the recognition for every project we did. It was always his idea. It was always, oh, I said that. That was my thing. And then, I was like, no, that's not really true. I said that, but okay, you're my boss. I'll shut up. And it's just, there was never, I think the biggest thing that annoyed me the most was that a lot of things got agreed, especially when you're in an agency, because it's really a consultancy world. A lot of things got said yes to. A lot of things got agreed on while I was not in the room, and then I got the job. And I think that it was that combination of all of that really made me feel like I'm just a machine or some robot there just doing your projects, right? And I think that really demotivated me a lot.
Man, that really sucks to be in that situation where you're in a command and control environment where the person tells you exactly, micromanaging exactly not just what you're going to do, but how you're going to do it. And then at the end, it sucks even more is they take all the credit for, oh yeah, I told him exactly what to do. Basically he gave you the Lego blocks and gave you the plan on how to put them together. And then you're just assembling and you're not being creative and coming up with your own solutions.
For sure, and I reference back to the Lego thing is that yes, you might actually be lucky in many cases that the project comes out well, but I think there starts coming this behavior where I'm not optimizing for the company in my mindset, and I think that might not be a necessary direct problem for the manager or me as a person. It's just why should I get that extra mile because he's just going to take the credit? I'm probably going to do all the work, and I'm just going to shut up and stay in the corner and do my thing, right? You have to remember there's also another background story in that is that we as a Danish people have a bit of a cultural thing where we don't stick our noses out too much. So I'm probably an outlier because I'm the person who would normally scream up and say, okay, this is not really, I don't really agree with this thing. But really, in my young days when I started in the business, I really had that cultural thing, like, don't stick your head out, just go with the pact, and everything's going to be well, and you're going to do fine. And I really learned that doesn't work even in the Danish culture or any type of work culture.
Man, I love that phrase that you just said there. You're not optimizing for the company. And to me, when I heard that, I said, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. If you're not optimizing for the company because your boss is just giving you a prescriptive task list of exactly what to do, then that means you're optimizing for your manager, which means everything that you do is just to make sure that he or she is like, off your tail, not griping at you, not complaining about your work, and just leaves you alone. And that's not really beneficial to the overall company.
Not at all. And I think it really comes out with like this old mindset is that you had a lot of people going through business school and learning management, and that's fine. Actually, there's a lot of skills within management that are still needed. You still need people to make sure that operations is working and all these type of things. This is great, but you're not able to really. You're able to some extent to teach leadership, but they didn't teach that 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's just like management. And I think that's where it really came out. Like you're sitting on top of 10 or 15 or 20 really smart heads. Like, why not utilize the workforce you have, and why not get that out? Then you will look like, you as a leader will look good anyways, because you're really using the collective brains. And I think a lot of people tend to think there as a manager, I am senior now, so I can make the best decision on behalf of the company. I simply don't think that's true. We had a conversation with one of the engineers the other day in my team, and he said, yeah, he knew him and his friend took an IQ test together. Like, they basically solved the puzzles online, and they had like 150, I think, in the results. And I think the hypothesis was, if they did that alone, they would have never got that, but they did it together. So in the end, you will come out with a really good result of that. And I think that is really a powerful thing that you need to learn as a manager, to really work with your employee, not to manage him. I think that's really key.
Wow, that's very interesting. I've never heard of anyone collaborating on an IQ test for the purpose of trying to see, just to see an experiment, to see exactly. If the group is smarter than the individual parts. That's pretty interesting.
It's a one case, so let's not make this an actual science. But I think just the idea of doing that, I think it really inspired me as well, to see, okay, there's definitely something here that we're working on. It's okay, this needs to be solved, right? I think it's the same thing as like, we need to solve this problem. Here's the solution, and then I'm pretty sure like 50% of the team will be like, yeah, is that really the best solution? And then they're just going to say, okay, let's just do it. And then it ends up not being the best solution. Instead of being, okay, we have this particular goal, or we're trying to give this value to a customer. By the way, go meet the customer, because I've done that as well. And then the engineers or designers or whoever, if we're talking in the software world, will come back and say, I actually think this is the best way to do it. And they're suddenly invested both emotionally, but also professionally. And I think that will just in any day turn out a big profit for any company, unless the actual main goal of the company is bad.
So let's talk about these solutions a little bit more. So we talked about how bad management is just about like the individual that's in charge of the situation, right? They take that command and control approach, and they say, okay, I've got the best ideas. I'm going to prescribe that the employees do X, Y, Z. So if we're not doing that, what's the right approach? How should leaders approach putting this team together and getting everyone involved?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we, it's maybe a more of a technical thing, but one thing we try to do is really involve them in every part of the process. We're still a small team, but I still believe this can be done in a big scale. So there are people with different disciplines in a team, a product manager, a business owner, they will come up with some sort of learnings for a goal. But if you start sharing that really early on with your team, you start involving them in how to build the solutions and even how to execute on it, even help you prioritize, like, is this more important? And that could be things like, if we did this in the code, if we talk technically, that will be a bit easier to do, and that will actually help us with this goal you have over here, because then we built half of the product already. I think these type of things, you as a business owner or CEO or product manager, you're able to not really see through the pattern of that. And I think this is where you really need to get them in. That's one thing. That's just more the learning part. I think the ownership part is extremely key. So if the developer or designer or UX person, copywriter, whatever role it is, has an investment emotionally into the idea you're building or the goal you're building, you'll get more out of them. They'll work harder, they'll work smarter any day. And this is my core belief. I think if you can involve them in all those parts, they feel that they had a part of it, I think you will come so far. And it's by asking them all the right questions in the process.
Yeah, I mean, that just makes total sense. I mean, every project that I've been on where I felt disconnected from the customer, I felt disconnected from the problem, and I didn't really understand the why the heck are we working on this, other than because the client is paying us a bunch of money or because, you know, a big VP asked for it. Yes. I just feel like, well, okay, I'm doing the job, I'm punching the clock, but I don't really care about the output. I just care about, okay, did my code get signed off, right? Did somebody check the box and say, yeah, it's clear, it can go? But the times when I work on a project where I'm like emotionally invested, like Sally has this problem and it's a really big problem and it's like painful, then maybe my code can help. Or maybe we can find a problem that doesn't have anything to do with code and we can just find something off the shelf to solve a problem. And to me, that's like so much more fulfilling because then I have like this emotional reward at the end that Sally had this problem and I was able to help, and now she's got a big smile on her face, and that just makes me happy.
For sure. And I think if we even flip the situation a bit, you also have many people who simply don't care. You know, like they're not, I don't even know how to classify them, but they like the work, the technical work or the design part, but they really don't want to get invested. Even though you try to open the door and, you know, like, hey, you know, come in, listen, talk to the customers, they won't necessarily do that. And I think that is equally the same amount of a big problem as you have a bad manager. So I think I'm really like, it's a two-way street. And I think you as a manager have to figure out how to unlock those particular guys. Like you have to understand why they're not motivated to do that. Maybe they shouldn't be in the company because they don't understand the problem or they don't care about it, but it's a paycheck. Like these things is also super hard to solve. And I've seen that in some cases as well, was like, okay, you know, here's the door, open up and learn and get invested. But in the end of the day, they're like, yeah, you know, I just want to go over here and deploy my code. And I think that's also a huge problem to solve.
So you're talking about how to get your employees motivated, how to connect with them, how to figure out if they're the right culture fit for the company, and then if they are or if they potentially are, like how to get them excited about the product. And I'm actually looking here at your website at duo.io, and the big headline right here on the front page says "Better One-on-Ones with Your Team." Yes. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing, because for me, when I was a manager in the oil and gas space and in the video game and sports entertainment space, that was absolutely the funnest part of all of my jobs, was having one-on-ones with my employees and really connecting to them as people and figuring out like what makes them tick and what gets them excited and what their goals really are that they're not saying, and how to bring out the best of them. So tell us a little bit about Duo and what you guys are doing to help managers and help employees have awesome one-on-ones, and why is that so important?
Yeah, excellent question, right? So in the last few years, and kind of in the HR space, people have been talking about employee engagement, which is a term where Gallup has like literally a number on their website. You know Gallup, the research company? Yes. On their website, it said, okay, 37% of the whole workforce in the US are engaged in their company, which means some of the things we talked about before, that they are, they're invested emotionally, they take all the right decisions, they're happy when they go to work, they feel compensated, they feel recognized, they feel all these different feelings when they go to work. That is, classified as now we engage in the company. We're committed, right? And it's, I had that feeling myself, and this is, of course, why I wanted to look at this particular problem. And I think when I went to Gallup's page first time and I saw that number, that over 60% of the whole workforce in the U.S., even globally, I think it's about 70%. It just made me sad. Just made me really, really sad that there's so many people out there are not happy going to work. Like that was really a big big problem in my head. And then I started reverse engineering, as you also mentioned, like what situations with my employee or my employees or with my managers that I love the most. And it was really the one-on-ones. I don't want to do surveys. I don't want to do perks programs or benefits and all these stuff. These are fine things, and I think they're part of designing a good experience within a company. You should have them, but I think the main key relationship where you can build trust, where you can change emotions, and you get people motivated and committed, is by really connecting on a human level. And then it's like kind of counterproductive when I start looking at like, okay, one-on-one in a software, and then you want people to meet, and like that was actually quite of a hard thing for us to look at. But what we're really trying to facilitate is the main part is that we facilitate the process. The main thing that we found out with one-on-ones is that they're not structured. They're not in a fixed cadence. People don't make sure they're there. They're not booked. They're not agreed on a frequency level. I think this is a very, very good signal as a leader saying, I'm going to invest 1 hour every week or every second week, or it doesn't matter the frequency length, but it's just that I'm going to commit it. That's a huge part of it. So that's why we help some of the process away from that. The next thing is that a lot of people don't know how to talk to necessarily an employee. So usually it ends up like, how's it going? And the easy thing would be, how's it going with this project? And that's not really what we want to talk about. We really want to talk about other emotional investment things like, what have you been proud about in the last month you've built? And that person would have said, I'm actually proud of this particular thing. And it's like, I didn't notice that. That's actually quite amazing. I think that you did a great job there. And I think that type of conversation is really hard to like just come out of the blue with, or have an understanding on doing that. So Duo really helps on making sure you go through different areas of really having these open up conversations. The last part we solve is probably the most important one, is whatever you agreed in these meetings, whatever thing you have decided that you should do, if they're not accountable, you lost it. Like then every conversation you had is just, you can throw it on the floor. And so we actually provide that. So there's an agreement list where there's a social contract of you and I agreed that I should be better at recognizing you when you did a great job, or I should look for, if there 20% of your time we're able to work on other projects, whatever kind of thing you've done. This is like an investment from both parties. There's a social agreement. And that's really the cadence of the system we provide.
Awesome. So it sounds like I'm actually a little bit confused, to be honest with you,
sorry.
if this. No. It's a great process. I love the process, but I'm not sure if this is a tool, like a SaaS tool that is like the calendar and the scheduling and the task list, or if this is coaching and training for the managers, or if it's both.
Yeah, fair enough. So it's always finding the right way to explain it, right? So you're 100% sure. The main thing we provide is the process of it.
Okay.
Meetings, setting up the meetings and all that stuff. But the questions we ask, we have been developed with business psychologists and so forth, that will be the training part of, okay, manager, we're asking this question to employee A, and he's going to reply on it. And when you go into the meeting, you will know exactly what to look for in the reply. You will actually exactly know why we asked this question, so you actually are able to drive the conversation. And that's where he will start learning over the few meetings how to have these conversations better and better, and knowing the employee better and better. So that's kind of the level we're trying to figure out of how much can we teach the employees. We could start in the future looking at personalities and say, when you talk to Chad, be a little more, fun and direct, or when you talk to Peter, be a little more specific about the feedback you have. So these are the things that we're trying to figure out. How do we really solve that in the future as well?
Awesome. Great stuff. I love this whole area of helping one-on-ones with the team. Dennis, I actually was very lucky when I was moving into a management position. I actually had a great mentor who we had one-on-ones every couple of weeks, and sometimes they were over the phone because he was a remote worker, and sometimes they were in person, but we always had them, and the style was very casual. It was very, hey, Chad, how's it going? What's going on in your life? How's your fiance? Oh, now you guys are married. How's your wife? Oh, now you're having kids. How's your kids? And it was just very much a getting to know me as a person and what inspires me and what I like and what gets me fired up outside of work. And then we would, over about 10 or 15 minutes transition into the projects and the work. And he would then know exactly what's going on and where my stresses are and where, my motivations are so that he could help me reach my goals a lot faster. So Dennis, in just a moment, I want to ask you about how we can structure great one-on-ones with our employees, or if we're an employee, how we can get our boss to have great one-on-ones with us. But first, we're going to take a quick break and thank our sponsors. This episode of Hello Tech Pros is sponsored by Minio Cloud Storage. Minio is a cloud object storage server for developers and DevOps written in Go. The Go programming language is the emerging language of choice for modern cloud infrastructure projects, and it allows Minio to be highly concurrent and lightweight. Minio is Amazon S3 compatible, built with microstorage architecture in mind, but at its heart, Minio is simple, scalable, and supported by a passionate developer and user community. In episode 89 of Hello Tech Pros, I talked with A.B. Periasamy, one of the founders of Minio, about the importance of community support and recruiting software developers who are as passionate about their product's code as artists are of their art. Check out that episode at hellotechpros.com/89 and check out Minio Cloud Storage at minio.io. That's minio.io. Are you new to podcasting? Are you looking for a fast, high-quality, yet budget-friendly podcast production team? Let TransSource Media take care of you. With a team of professional audio and video editors, writers, and graphic artists, they can help you build your podcast from planning, post-production, and platform submission. Using only cutting-edge software and studio equipment, they're here to make each and every show sound at its best. To get a free quote, please visit www.transsourcemedia.com or send them an email at marketing@transsourcemedia.com or call them at 209-505-5693. TransSource Media, transforming businesses through the power of multimedia. Okay, we're back with Dennis Green-Lieber. Dennis is a product and business developer at Founders, and he's also a co-founder of Duo.io. And Duo.io is a tool and a process to help managers have better one-on-ones with their team, right? Because we understand now that we don't want to just be managers that be very prescriptive and say, Dennis, you have to do X, Y, Z, and I want you to do it this way with these 4 steps. No, we want employees to be able to be part of the team and be part of the process and to help understand, what the problems are and then come up with their own unique solutions for it. So in order to do that, we have to really engage our employees and build a feeling of that they are engaged and that they are happy and that they are being listened to. And the only way to do that is spend time with them one-on-one. So Dennis, what can we do as managers to have really, really effective one-on-one conversations with our employees? You've kind of touched on it and hinted about it through the process of what Duo helps. But if we're brand new to this, maybe we're a manager just getting started, or maybe we have been a manager for a while, but we haven't had specific one-on-ones with our employees, where do we start?
Good question. Start by using Duo. No. I think if I was a young leader and, I had my first team members, I would start planning out a cadence, a recurring cadence. Say, okay, we're going to do this every week, every second week. It's really up to you at the frequency, but just having a committed cadence. And number 2 is never cancel it, never move it, commit to it. And in the end of the day, sometimes there's a client meeting or whatever. If you have to plan around that, I think that's the most important thing. Commit to having that conversation. I think that's the first part of it. Second part of it is, I think in the first few meetings you should spend time on getting to know the person. You mentioned before you had a mentor who suddenly knew that you were getting married, understanding the kind of the personal level. I think it's hard for someone to naturally do this, but I think you should find some sort of common denominator about, are you interested into games or whatever, just to really find a place where you feel comfortable talking. Second of all, I would actually try to find a structure of asking the right questions. And that is extremely hard. And I think it depends from relationship to company. But you mentioned you had a lot of conversation about, the personal stuff, and then you segued into the deliverable or the actions or the goals that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people forget to ask like a really outlier, unnatural question like, "So, Chad, what inspires you at work?" And you'll be like,
Dennis, that's a great question. I don't know. Let's see. No boss has ever asked me that before.
No, but exactly. Like,
right.
And I think that type of thing, first of all, you as an employee or a manager will like, I don't even know what to expect from this reply, but I actually would potentially learn a ton from that. And I think he would also, and I think the first time you ask to you will be like, I don't know. And you might linger in the back of the head for some time, and then you will ask the question again, and it'll be like, you know what? What really inspires me is that I'm able to do X, Y, Z, or working with Peter is great. And just by having that, you would know, okay, maybe I should put Peter and Chad together in the room to work more often, or maybe I should give these type of projects to Chad and not Peter, or whatever you will learn from that. And I think you can go and source all sorts of questions online. There's a lot of people who have done stuff like that. We've looked into all those things as well. And I think if you had that, sometimes pick up a question which is super uncomfortable for you to ask, and just see what happens. I think that's really my second learning, because you learn a lot of stuff there. Otherwise, you'll tend to go into this comfort zone of asking only the things you would like to hear about or things you would like to talk about. And I think that's the problem by itself.
Yeah, and I think to do that effectively, right, we have to build trust and openness with the employees. And so for me, what's always worked in the past is being just a little bit vulnerable at the beginning of the conversation or at the beginning of developing this relationship, and just be very honest and transparent about, hey, man, this is what I'm struggling with. This week, I'm struggling about my boss is giving me this or that, and then I'm confused because I'm also supposed to be working on this other project, and I know that I haven't, I don't have all the right answers in our staff meeting, and it seems like I'm talking out of both sides of my face, but that's kind of because different stakeholders have different ones. And so this is what I'm struggling with. What are you struggling with? And then, if I'm very honest about that and not just given the kind of BS manager answer that sometimes we hear, that allows employees to go, oh, wow, Chad really cares, and he's struggling too. He's not complaining and griping and being very bitter about it, but he's just letting me know what his concerns are and what he's doing to try to resolve them, and he wants my help. Now, how can I help? Oh, okay, maybe I'll be a little bit more open and honest with him.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right on that. But again, if you're like a new manager, also be open about, hey, this is new stuff to me. Like, I am, I've not done this a lot, but I think we should try and invest in doing this, because it's better to meet and talk about things instead of having, I think again, it comes into this meeting up. I think a lot of people tend to we're chatting in Slack, and I've heard many leaders I meet them at lunch, I talk with them at lunch, and I'm like, yeah, that's not really. I know them. I know Peter. He plays soccer. This is great. I know him, but that's not really knowing him, right? You have to build this trust somehow, and I think it's extremely hard. And I think even a software like us, like what we do, we can build a trust for them. They have to do the work as well. But we can help them facilitate, and we can help them augment to be better at it. But we can never solve their mindsets or their behavior 100%. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge.
Okay, so let's take the opposite approach, and now we're in the mindset of an employee whose manager is not reaching out and not creating one-on-ones with us. What can we do to bridge that gap and to build that relationship?
Good question. If I was an employee, I actually think I would actually do the reverse model and just, we're going to have one-on-ones, but it's going to be the other way around. I would literally just, take my manager off, say, hey, do you have half an hour? Let's go somewhere for half an hour. And let's just start talking about, life and work. I think it's the exact same thing. And I think you could hope by doing that, and just be honest afterwards. I even do it once, and then afterwards said, if you felt like a great meeting, say, okay, you know what, this felt great, and the manager will be like, this actually felt great. Like, why not we do this on a weekly basis or a monthly basis? And I think you can spearhead that. But I have to say an important thing as well, which some people tend to forget, and I actually hate talking about millennials, but there's an overall trend of what they require in the future as well. They have a different behavior than you and I, based on age. And I think a lot of managers tend to at least open up their eyes now. Like, this is actually what they require. This is like for them a standard. They're used to social communication. They're used to talk online constantly. They used to be very social behavior in all of their things. They're very predicated in that way to do that. And I think you as a work manager or leader has to really be very conscious about what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years when the majority of the workforce are people who are, been born in the Facebook era or been living in or growing up in that generation. And I think that's where it will require even more of that. So even though you naturally wouldn't like to do it, or it's not their standard definition, you will end up doing it because they require it from you. And they're very entitled, not entitled, that was a negative side of it, but they're very required of doing this. And I think you have to be aware of that.
Yeah, and I think just in general, right, some employees, regardless of what demographic they come from, some employees are actually going to be a little bit resistant to this idea. They're going to go in very, very defensive just because in their work experience in the past, right, anytime a manager asks them to come in and have a one-on-one discussion, it's always been very negative. It's, why are you doing this?
Yes.
Why aren't you doing that? Right. And so
Yes.
they're going to be a little bit gun shy, right? And they're going to be a little bit nervous going into it. And so you need to establish that this is a safe place, that this is a safe zone, that whatever we ask in here, right, it's not to belittle, it's not to put anybody down. It's actually just because I want to create this relationship and I want to know like what your concerns are so that I can try to make a better environment to help you. And then there's going to be other people that if you don't meet them once a week, right, they're going to get very, very upset. They're going to get very mad. And you're like, I'm sorry, that's, I was out sick on Thursday and I know our meetings are on Thursdays. Can we make it up next week? But I had the stomach bug. They're still going to be like, dude, you weren't there for me when I needed you. I count on you every Thursday. And so there's going to be a broad spectrum of a lot of different feelings across the team, and just be prepared for it.
100%. And I think there's a lot of this like, oh, one-on-ones is like where you put off steam. And I'm like, yeah, that's at least one thing to do in there. But I think there's so many other things to let out. And I think it's not a performance review. And I think you're right about like a lot of people like, hey, let's do a one-on-one. It feels like, oh, now I'm being like micro review, but not really the annual review. And I think that moment we have to kill immediately. And I think we have tried to work that a lot into our model. So the questions are very much about how to unlock the person, very much how to understand what behavior they have, what they're really inspired about, and all these different things. And that can go into like, do you understand why the company's strategic goal even is? And then it's there's some right and wrong answers in that, but I think it's just a matter of doing that. It's not about have you delivered this product and are you shipping this code or whatever kind of thing it is. That should not be in that conversation at all, in my opinion. I think you should still have those strategical, meetings, but I think you should have one meeting which is completely invested in knowing the person, unlocking the person, and build that trust. I think you should separate them like you should separate annual reviews and salary compensation talks as well.
Awesome. Great tips. Man, I could sit here and talk about this stuff all day long because I'm just so passionate about it, but unfortunately we're running out of time. Dennis, could you share any parting words of wisdom for our audience, the best way that we can connect with you and Duo, and then we'll say goodbye.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks for the talk. You could go to duo.io, so that's with 2 U's and 2 O's. So, and you can catch me on Dennis with 2 N's at duo.io.
And any final words of wisdom for the audience?
Yes, 22% of the workforce is not engaged. Beware of that. That's really a big number. 68% of your company is not happy. So go fix it.
Man, that's a huge number. That's a big number of people, and it's actually kind of scary. So regardless of if you're in a manager position, if you're in the team lead position, if you're in an employee position, think about that. What is the culture in your team? What is the culture of the people around you? As you're sitting here listening to this podcast with your headphones on, are you like, yeah, that's about right? Because more than half the people here don't really care about the product or the service. They're just trying to punch the clock and get that next paycheck and do whatever the boss tells you. Or are you in an environment where everybody's super engaged and everybody's trying to work to the best of their ability? And if not, then maybe we need to start having some conversations about it. And one-on-one conversations is a great way to start.
Exactly.
Awesome. Tech Pros, you've been listening to Dennis Green-Lieber, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/143. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Leadership Wednesday, but tomorrow, my featured guest and I talk about technology. On Friday, people in communication. Saturday, entrepreneurship. Sunday, being unplugged. And then next week, we kick it off with Motivation Monday, followed by Tuesday, productivity. And then we're back again on Wednesday to discuss leadership. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.